Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for May 31st, 2011. I'm Joe Lynch.
I'm Cayenne Anderson.
And I'm Bill White.
There you go. Our guest tonight is in his 7th term as Alderman at Large for the City of Somerville. He has chaired almost every committee on the board and held the reins as President of the Board of Aldermen. A Somerville native, he is a graduate of Harvard University and Georgetown Law. He has clerked for a federal appeals court judge and is a practicing attorney here in Somerville. I am pleased to announce that he recently began his re-election campaign for his 8th term as Somerville Alderman at Large. Under his chairmanship of the now famous Committee on Public Health and Public Safety, he has tackled some of the more difficult aspects of urban life, such as rodent control, contaminated urban land, abandoned properties, and crime in the city of Somerville. I am pleased to welcome for his first appearance the announced candidate for re-election here in the city of Somerville, Alderman Bill White, our friend. Welcome. It's taken us 2 years to get you here.
I thought this was your second time. I just assumed.
No, I don't. No, I've never been on it.
No?
No.
He's been invited.
Shy.
They've all been invited, but you know, in fairness to Bill and to a lot of the aldermen, when you're on multiple committees,
Yeah.
Tuesday nights
Yeah,
is a
it's a rough
jam-packed
night.
night. Yeah.
Every night's a jam-packed night. You guys always have things going on.
Yeah, usually, well, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights you have off, but a lot of the veterans' dedication to the street corners are on Saturdays, so Sunday sometimes you have some memorial events to attend. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people somehow just think the Board of Aldermen meets twice a month, you know, when they see our
Right.
public, TV versions, but there's so much more work that's done. Most of the work is done in committees.
Yeah.
You have a lot of zoning board, planning board meetings that we attend. You know, neighbors contact us when there's a controversy. Proposed developments that a ward alderman may have. We have the Resi-Stat meetings that the alderman at large attend. It's pretty much 4 nights a week.
You know, you guys, we'll get into the other aspects of your tenure on the board and stuff, but you know, I've said it before on public blogs that are out there in Somerville and here on the show, I don't defend everything that the Board of Aldermen does, but I do respect the amount of time that they put into, you know, for, I think the salaries were raised a few years ago, and, you know, people started to have this, well, why should they get a raise? Why do they deserve a raise? Well, you know, there's not a whole lot of people who understand that you guys are out 4, 5, and sometimes 6 days a week doing constituent work.
Right, and we don't have staff either, so it's
Right.
funny, a lot of times I'll get a call at home and I'll say hello, and the person will say, I'd like to speak to Alderman White, and I said, you know, you got him. And he said, oh, I thought I'd reach a staff person. I says, there's no staff people. It's,
That's why you
know,
need one of those robot automated callers, you know?
Yeah.
So let's get right to the meat and the juicy part of this, Bill. Nasty rumor floating around out there by persons unknown, and they probably better remain nameless. Somebody had you moving to Tahiti, I think, and not running for re-election. You're selling your house. You're moving to Dover. You do.
Right.
Where does this stuff start, Bill?
I think the problem is, Joe, if you've been active in a community for a long time,
Yeah.
you know, you might rub somebody the wrong way for whatever reason, and, you know, when you've been on the board for 14 years, my private law practice, it could be, you know, I represented a client against somebody you don't know, but
Right.
whatever. You know, actually Hawaii, I looked in to see if I could lie in the beach in Hawaii, and now with our, you know, access, the Alderman's meetings are broadcast on the World Wide Web.
You could-
figure maybe I
you
could
could
do a
make that
Skype in or
happen.
something
Yeah, there
like
you go.
that, but
Well, you can't go to Hawaii yet, and you can't get off the set, so come on a little
all
closer
right,
over here.
all righty.
So we'll put it to rest. Alderman Bill White has not left the city. He still lives in Ward 4. You did sell your big house, though.
that's in the process, and I'm also moving. I'm staying within Ward 4.
Ward 4.
Now, there was never any thought at all about leaving the city. This is my home. This is where I've made my commitment. This is where I have a stake. And especially now with the development taking place that's proposed, and with the tough economic climate, you know,
Yeah.
and I have my 92-year-old mother who's at the, you know, VNA. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way, shape, or form I'd ever leave this city.
Well, that's why here on Greater Somerville, we like to bring the guests in to speak for themselves, rather than have it in a rumor column or let somebody else speak for the elected officials in this city. So there you have it. Bill White, running for re-election, staying in this city.
Actually, it was a great thing that rumor got going, because I don't know how many phone calls I got, people asking me, to stay. I says, don't worry, I'm not leaving. I got volunteers taking my nomination papers around to get signatures.
There you go.
It's kind of nice. It makes you feel loved, right?
It
Everybody
does,
wants
yeah.
you to stick around.
yeah.
It's a good sign.
So it's the unintended consequence of somebody's doing that now you have all these supporters coming in.
Well, I think
Good
these
for you,
people
Bill.
always supported me, but when there was their concern, they said, let me give them a call, let me see what we can do for them.
So without flattering you, Bill, because you and I have been friends for a long time, so let me not flatter you, but there's always one or two on the board that you hear consistently people saying, Bill White brings up good points when he's on the board. So let's get right to your work on the Board of Aldermen. Many years ago when I first came back to the city, I would watch you in action in the Finance Committee. And no offense to your colleagues, but when some of that stuff was coming up, you have to have a financial background to understand some things that are being talked about. And I would see when the camera would pan around the horseshoe, and there was kind of like blank stares, but you've chaired finance. You've chaired legislative matters at one point, or a second in command?
I think I was second in command there.
Yeah. So the legislative matters takes up a lot of the ordinances that are in the city,
Correct.
or changing things like that. Finance, obviously, control over the city, financial governance. Public health and public safety has now hit the forefront.
Right.
With a lot of things that you've instituted. And I know that you and Alderman Sullivan also do the Senior Services Committee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that it that you're on this year?
Yeah, I'm on
Delegates.
senior services.
It's a pretty long
I'm also
list.
on land use.
And land use.
Right, let's
Yeah.
see, finance, legislative matters, chair land use, chair public health and public safety, and on senior services.
So 14 years, give us a little synopsis of how the city was 14 years ago and where it is today and where you see us going.
Well, actually, I go by my hairline. 14 years ago, I had a much longer hairline, and it's... No, but it's interesting. I think there's like a correlation between time ago and the amount of time we're now putting in because of a lot of the development issues.
Right.
If you go back to like 97, 98, 99, there wasn't that much development taking place in the city, which meant you didn't have a lot of neighborhood meetings, you didn't have big issues before the zoning board
Yep.
or before the planning board. So when I look back, it was a much lighter schedule then. The committees didn't meet as often either.
Or as long.
Or for the meetings didn't
Right.
go as long, that's
Right.
right. Now, on both ends, I think, we've seen Somerville really make major efforts in the world, and in the press, especially as far as development, with the latest, vote for Assembly Square, for instance.
Yeah.
Some of the things we have with the, Resistat, for instance, with the Somerstat, the use of statistics to try to hone in on.
That whole reporting mechanism that we're using as a measurement tool.
Right.
Yep.
And, we've gotten a lot of press as well, things like Shape Up Somerville. So I think, our reputation, especially from when I was a kid, has, improved tremendously.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm proud to be, an elected official, when we're doing that.
Well,
It
I
makes
think-
you feel good.
Yeah, I think you're also more out there, I think, with online technology as it is, with the blogs and everything going online. You probably don't go a day without having someone comment. I'm sure it's all positive, of course, Bill, but, it really is amazing how quickly word can get out now. It definitely has changed.
And also
I'm sure
the
your job a
emails,
lot.
because I always try to answer emails, and I found that in the past, if somebody had to call you up, they'd have to make that personal contact,
Yeah.
and sometimes people were hesitant about doing it.
About saying
Yeah.
things.
But now, where they
Yeah.
can send you, it's not unusual to sometimes get 20 emails a day, or if it's a
Yeah.
big issue, to get emails from 50 or 60 people, you try to answer them.
Well, there's a blessing in being this, the speed of technology and the speed of communication is mind-boggling these days. But, it's a double-edged sword because that presents a host of problems, obviously security, privacy, stuff like that when you're a government official. But at the same time, it could be worse, Bill. It could be, back in the government days when everybody didn't have a phone, so they were showing up on your doorstep. They were coming right to the door, knocking on the door if they needed something. But
we almost wonder if they get more of an untainted version, because there are those people that will send out an email and put some pretty nasty things in there because they feel like, they're hidden behind the screen, and I think that's a little cowardly in some levels. But then also, you have people that are going to be more honest, whereas face-to-face, they may not say, well, I don't know about that decision.
Well, yeah, I mean, even some of our newspapers are cowardly when they do things, but, not just bloggers, not just bloggers.
They've knocked our show a couple times.
They've knocked our show a couple of times, but we can take it.
We can.
We can take
Thick
it.
skinned over here,
We try
all
to
of
bring
us.
guests that, in their own voice, they will talk to the people of Somerville rather than let the newspapers or the reporters talk for them. So public health and public safety, I'm going to not giving you any more compliments than you deserve, Bill, but public health and public safety, you've been in our neighborhood several times. We had issues with a sober house that was established in the neighborhood. We've had issues with rodent control because of the demolition of MaxPac. We've had issues with playground public safety, with hypodermic needles being found in the playgrounds. That, to me, seems like one of the more nuts and bolts committees, rather than finance or legislative matters. Do you get to speak to many more constituents than you ever did?
Yeah, I find that is the case. Before I was made chair of the committee, it used to meet like twice a year or whatever, and I thought it would be an ideal committee to work with the ward alderman, for instance, and deal with ward problems, and especially with Alderman O'Donovan has referred a number of items to my committee, and we've homed in on them in Ward 5, because what it allows you to do is, first, I like to hold the committee meetings right in the affected neighborhood if that's possible. So a lot of times people don't want to come up to City Hall or whatever. You have it right in the neighborhood. They can come in. And what it also allows me to do is cut through the bureaucracy instead of people sending letters or emails from one department to another department. We bring everybody into the committee meeting. So we can bring in inspectional services, we can bring in the Board of Health, we can bring in the police, we can bring in the city solicitor's office, for instance. As an example, we had a couple of abandoned properties, one in Ward 2 and one in Ward 5, that had been around for a while and causing all kinds of problems for the neighbors. People were living in the backyard, and one of them defecating. You had siding and bricks falling off of another. Absolutely horrible, a safety hazard for the kids in the neighborhood, and we were actually able to deal with it in committee. We got the city solicitor there, and they found out that there's a state law about receiverships. And what the city does is the city's law department contacts, I believe it's the Attorney General's office. They look into it, and if they agree, there's a letter that's sent to the owner. Then you can go to court quickly and have a receiver appointed to control the property, and we're doing that with 2 of them.
Have we seen more abandoned properties as a result of the foreclosure issues around?
Slightly more, but I look at what goes on in other communities, not like the level of Boston or Brockton or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, we've been pretty. I mean, again, any problem is a problem, but in comparison with some of the other neighboring communities, not so much, because I think a lot of the folks who purchased the properties, they bought condos, for instance. You had a lot of young professionals who were, a couple of people being employed, and although you do hear some horror stories, it's unlike some of the other blue-collar communities that have gotten hit much harder.
Sure, Lawrence, Holyoke, Brockton,
Fall River, New Bedford, all of those.
Development. When you started to talk about development early on, development brings development again is one of those issues, Bill, where it's a double-edged sword. It can be like manna from heaven for the city because it brings a lot of tax revenue, but it also creates its own set of problems in public health and public safety. We haven't got, Assembly Square is not built yet. Inner Belt, it may be at some day, but we now have, pocket developments happening. Is there an increase in your mind? I'm not going to lead you through this, but is there an increase in terms of a correlation between the density that we're starting to pack in the city and the need for more fire and police? Or can we handle what we've got without adding fire and police?
Well, in the short term, yes, because if you look at the census over the last 10 years, even with the development, we've lost some population.
So it's a net.
So that's
Yep.
what, if Assembly Square gets developed and you have, 2,000 units are ultimately slated to be built there, 2,000 residential units. So if you figure, I don't know, 1.5 or 2 people, that's
Yeah.
4,000 people. So I think there's a recognition that you'll need some sort of a fire station located there when you have the ultimate build-out, both because of the people who are living there and also the commercial development.
But that's what, four years out?
Well,
Three?
much longer than that. I mean, the first development slated for growth based on the bond that we just voted is the 400 residential units. They're going to be rental units with a theater and retail on the first floor.
So incrementally, I mean, over the years, when this starts getting built out, and we're adding 200 at Max Pack, we're adding down at Assembly, and then these pocket developments, I think what you're saying is the city overall has lost population. So what we're doing is we're adding back, but over a longer period of time, there may be a need for more public services.
If you open up areas that have not previously been developed,
Right.
because you don't have the public safety infrastructure there, you don't have the fire station that was designed to deal with it. So
Yeah.
if the inner belt, for instance, also got opened up, you'd have to, look at something being stationed there. But the dense development does have impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. That's where you see it, where people have lived for many years in the street, and there might be a vacant lot, and then a developer comes in and is not building a two-family house, but somehow wants to put 10 units on it,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
That's where you see the people activated, for instance.
Well, I'm curious, having been a member, you've lived here for a long time, and I'm an architect, obviously I'm concerned with the development. At any point, do you feel that there's a lot of development coming down the road for Somerville? I mean, at any point did you feel, or do you feel that we're going too fast and that there's a chance that maybe we're going to overdevelop? I don't know. I mean, it's good to see that they're phasing it, because that's obviously we'll at least let it play out and see how it turns out. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
No, I think in the larger areas we're requiring the planning. So, for instance, at Assembly Square, the inner belt, you don't see it. I mean, again, where you have lots, for instance, that's where you have to rely more on if it's before the planning board or the zoning
Yeah.
board to, exercise, their diligence and their authority under the zoning code to make sure it is appropriate. Now, on a number of them, I've supported the residents because
Yeah.
I thought, that some of the proposals were a bit too dense, and, again, recognizing the impact that they have in the neighborhood. Now, I think what folks also have to think about in the city at large is many people think that any development is good. And actually, if you put in residential units, it doesn't really improve the tax base. We need commercial development, because under state law, you can tax commercial development at a higher rate
Right.
than residential. And they also have less drains on the public safety aspect of it.
There's a lot of people who they get the concept of what you just said, but in a pure and simple explanation, if you have commercial properties that operate between the hours of 8:30 in the morning, I'm talking office buildings or something like that, they operate from 8:30 until, say, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. And there is a less likely chance of ambulatory care being needed for that, or fire being needed for that, because you have newer buildings with fire suppression systems. They're made out of hopefully non-combustible materials, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's basically in the commercial world. In the residential world, our newer residentials are built with, the fire suppression systems. So, but I would think it's the police part of it, it's the public safety part of it that I think has people scared. That some people still say in the city, we don't have enough police on the ground. There's not enough police who are visible out there. But I've seen the numbers.
Right.
And the numbers bear up that we are comparable to other cities
Right.
our size.
Or better, I
Or
think,
better.
in very many respects, because a lot of the crime that we do have is a crime of opportunity, where it might be a quick break-in. I mean, a lot of the larcenies and things are out of motor vehicles, with the GPSs and things of that sort. In residences, it might be somebody, you know, a quick run-in, grab and snatch, and they're out. You don't have a lot of the serious crimes that other communities have.
You're talking violent,
Right.
violent crimes. Yeah.
You know, home invasions where people are actually assaulted in the course of a robbery or something like that. Former Chief Holloway gave a good bit of advice at one of the committee meetings, because I guess what they found is there was one group who they caught where they were fencing. But what they would do is they would ride around in a neighborhood and they would look at the boxes that were out on trash day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if they saw, you know, somebody had a new
The latest
60-inch TV,
yeah.
plasma set or whatever, the box is out there.
Yeah.
You know, they make a
Computer
note
boxes.
of it.
Yeah.
So what the good chief said was to folks, you know, rip up your boxes.
Invert them. Hide the writing
Wow.
that's on the outside.
Right.
Bill, don't go to Hawaii
Oh,
yet.
I'm
Come
sorry.
on here
I'm
just
sorry,
a little
Joe.
bit.
All right.
I know you want to get that plane to Hawaii, Bill, but it's not going to happen.
Tahiti.
I'm sorry, Tahiti. So let's go into a couple of more things. You had touched on Assembly Square, and I think one of the things that Alderman Gawartz was here, and we asked her about her opinion on the floating of the $25 million bond for the infrastructure. Controversy surrounded it because the developer said, we'll pay for it. Times changed. Economic times kind of hit them as much as anybody else. And then they came back to the city and said, we need your help. We need the state's help and we need your help. And could you float the $25 million bond for this first phase of Assembly Square? Did I kind of encapsulate that a little bit?
Yeah, I might have phrased it a little bit differently.
Okay.
Yeah, in the covenant that they signed with the mayor, they did say that they would be responsible for the infrastructure, but also the city said that they would assist them as far as, you know, financing. But, I mean, the thing we have to think about is this, it's the T-stop.
Right.
The first meeting that I served in after I got elected it was January of 1998, was when I put the proposal forward that there be a moratorium at Assembly Square and development until we had a comprehensive plan. And one of the things I talked about was examining the idea of getting a T-stop, because nobody thought about a T-stop. I mean, what was on Slate then was a strip mall with a lot of parking,
Right.
and that was going to be it. We wouldn't
And
have
a lot of industry.
the industry wasn't there, so the
Central Steel was still down in there. We had a cab company in there. There was another company.
There was
over
Spalding
there.
Brick. that was
Spalding
there,
Brick,
right.
yeah.
But the tax revenues contributed by them versus that area in comparison to what it could generate and then help the taxpayers of Somerville and help provide money for, you know, for our budget, it just didn't mesh. So there was really that need. And Mayor Gay, in fact, you know, when she got in, explored with the T the option of the T building a T-stop there, and they said no. From day one, it was clear that the T was not going to pay for it. So our hope had been through the federal government, and Congressman Capuano worked very hard on that. But what happened was with the Republicans now getting control of Congress and their anti-earmark provisions, that money was eliminated effectively so that there would be no T-stop. And I think anybody looking for the last 10 years has not seen anything happen at Assembly Square. And why is it? It's because there is no T-stop there. You've had, what, the movie theater in mothballs for how many years? If that really was perceived as valuable land today,
Right.
you wouldn't have the movie theater in mothballs. Somebody would have bought that and put something in.
That's right.
But people are waiting for something to happen. And the T-stop is part of it. And in order to get the T-stop, the city had to make a commitment as well. And now $25 million has been floated out. It goes in two stages. The first stage is approximately $15 million. The second stage is $10 million. The first $15 million doesn't even get issued until the T-stop is a sure thing and the developer has broken ground for the project that they're supposed to make.
So we're not
When
just
is that? When is that going to be? Sorry, is it?
2013 or so, I
Okay.
think.
so we're not just handing money over.
No, and that money is for the infrastructure.
Right.
So think about it, folks. You're going to have a T-stop, and the money that we're floating the bond for is for infrastructure, roads, sewers, etc.
Right.
Doesn't help the developer, and if anything were to happen to the developer, you'd still have a T-stop, and you would still have your roads and infrastructure.
The city still owns it.
We will own it.
Yeah.
And then also what happens is if the developer doesn't meet its milestone, it has to pay to us the $15 million back, and we don't float the $10 million.
Right.
So that would never get floated. You'd have the $15 million, and
So
you'd
the-
also have the infrastructure, and you should also have the T-stop. Plus, one other thing you have to get out, and I don't, you know, folks may not have concentrated on this, is that the proposed development that the developer is going to put in, that they have to reach the milestones on, is going to pay enough property tax revenue to pay the interest and principal on the bonds. So there'll be no net cost to the Somerville taxpayers. And once that really gets up and going and they've completed it, just in that little parcel, there's going to be a positive impact for the taxpayers. They will be paying more in property tax than the principal and interest payment on the bonds.
Earlier in the show, I said something about the Board of Aldermen with the glazed look over the eyes when Bill White got going on finance, talking about finance. Here's the glazed look. Here's the glazed look.
I was paying attention.
But Bill, that is...
I ain't always paid attention.
Thank you.
But Bill, that is exactly why, you know, people want you on the board, because you understand the intricacies. You have always been extremely responsive to me, you know, when I bring an issue forward. And I sent my comments in about the $25 million bond. I thought it was a good idea as long as we had all the intricacies of how we issued, who got ownership, and what our stopgap was in case they failed on their commitments. So we are probably 2 minutes away. So let me turn it over to you for 1 second and say, your tenure on the board, is there ever going to be a point where you're just going to say, I'm done?
At this point, maybe they're going to have to carry me out. I don't know. I really enjoy what I'm doing because, again, I mean, I grew up in this city. I went to Somerville High School. I remember the bad days, and I like to be here because it's also a way for me to give back to the community. Because if it wasn't for people that helped me, I never would have been able to go to Harvard College. I never would have been able to go to Georgetown Law. And this is my way of repaying those folks who, none of which are, I mean, they've all passed on. But,
Yep.
you know,
There you go.
you try to do the best you can.
There you go. Well, I saw you right at the head of the parade on Sunday. There he was. And I thought, you know, the only thing that came to my mind, don't take offense at this, but I thought about some of the stuff that we've seen in the paper. And there's a T-shirt that somebody gave me years ago, and it says, if you feel like you're being run out of town, get in front of the crowd and make it look like a parade. So I was on Highland Avenue, and there comes Bill White, the first alderman, coming down.
Well, we have the flags, and I like to give them to the kids and
Yeah.
stuff. It's
Yeah.
you know, it's a
No,
bit of
it's great.
patriotism. It's a nice touch, and the kids and their parents appreciate it.
Everybody made it.
good turnout.
Everybody made it up to Teal Square. No casualties along
hot.
the way. It was
Very
hot.
hot.
It was a hot day, but
That's a long parade. It's a long parade because I did notice it was getting to some of the seniors and the little kids. So, and me with the burnt forehead.
Yeah.
We have additional lighting tonight.
Yeah,
In
we look
case
like
you're
we're in
wondering,
Tahiti. It's very bright in here.
we want to acclimate your blood
We're
to.
giving you a tan to send you off
There
for
you
I
your
go.
put my
voyage.
suntan lotion on. So
Fantastic. Couple meeting minutes here, just to go over. Ward 2 Resistat was this evening. Hopefully you made it out there. There's a Somerville Chamber of Commerce business after hours on the 2nd from 5 to 7 at Orleans. Oops, sorry, I didn't turn this off. The Farmers Market, Union Square, is opened.
Yeah.
And it's this Saturday from 9 to 1, so get on down there. And then there's a garage sale for pets in need at Mad Oyster Studios at 2 Bradley on June 4th from 8 to 12. And just a little bit of a note, I am going to be gone for June because there are Green Line Extension workshops, design workshops that hopefully you'll go to their website and find out time and location. So Joe will have it all by himself, so hopefully I'll come back.
All right.
We'll see.
She'll be back. We'll see her back in July, all tanned and rested. We want to thank our guest tonight, Alderman at Large Bill White from the City of Somerville, running for re-election. We'll see you next week. As always, stay safe and stay informed.
Good night.